Hello, hello. My name is Azul for Love, and I'm your Oxytocin Dealer. And I'm here today with Jaime Black. She is a musician, and she has a podcast, and she also, and I'm just blanking on the name now, Silverlake
Priestess.
Silverlake. I don't know why I forgot the priestess piece. So it's my pleasure, Jaime, to have you on the show today. Thank you so much for being here. And I'd love to give you the opportunity to share a little bit more about yourself, and then we'll jump right into the questions.
Well, thank you for having me here. I do this work a lot as well, having guests and interviewing, and so I don't often get to be on the other side. So this is definitely like quite an honor and a fun experience to be on the other side. So I am a musician. I'm a priestess. I do spiritual life coaching. I read tarot cards. I lead rituals for women and for mixed groups of people, usually around the new moon and the full moon. And there's music involved, sound baths, ritual, personal empowerment work, all of it. And so I have a podcast as well. It's called the Silverlake Priestess Podcast, and I started with interviewing women that were doing spiritual work, women who identified as witches and priestesses, psychics, mediums, and artists too, and musicians, basically people doing spiritual work in whichever way that they did it, and then with the addition of that, building a business around it so they can serve their sacred purpose full time. It's what I do as well, so it's just having these conversations with people doing the same work. So that's really fun.
I love that. I love everything that you're sharing. I can't wait to join and be a part of, especially the moon ceremonies. And I'm fascinated with ritual and ceremony work, so I can't wait to experience that.
Yeah.
Yay, thank you. So I'm going to jump right into the questions. And my first question for you today, Jaime, is what was the darkest night of your soul? Or maybe a couple examples of your darkest night of your soul?
Well, I think that the first one was really the most significant. I think that our first one is such a teacher. I was in my early 20s, I think it was about 22, and my younger brother broke his neck in a surfing accident, and he became paralyzed from the accident. And it was really scary. We were afraid that he wasn't going to live through the entire experience. I didn't even know that if someone broke their neck, that meant that they were not going to be able to walk or move for the rest of their life. I mean, obviously it doesn't always happen, but most of the time, that kind of comes along with the injury. And there was an 8-month period of time where he was living in the hospital and I was living in the hospital with him for about 6 months. So what that changed everything. It's really like the Tower card for any of you listening that understand the tarot. It completely destroyed my idea of life, how my life was going to be, any way that I had envisioned life in the future. It was really difficult for my family. It kind of broke the family unit. Completely just destroyed any foundation that I was so young, I wasn't even really aware of that foundation that I had that was so stable for me. It broke it. And it was confusing because I do come from a really supportive family. And my parents had been married until this. I mean, this broke their relationship, and it was really powerful, and it was really tragic initially when it happened. And so the people that I would normally lean on, my family, my parents especially, they couldn't be there for me. In fact, I needed to be there for them more. And it was like everybody was attacking each other. Everybody had these expectations of each other and judgments of each other of how we were all handling the situation or not handling the situation. I'm the oldest, and my brother's 2.5 years younger than me, and then my sister's about 8 years younger. And so at the time, it was like the day before she was starting her new high school. And so it was just gnarly for everyone. And so all of a sudden, first of all, this is happening. This really scary thing is happening to my brother. And for anyone that has ever had someone in their life, die or almost die, you become really aware of their value to you and how much they affect your life, your daily life. And so then there was a lot of like grasping onto that, and just every waking moment being really present with like my thoughts and my energy and how I was viewing the entire situation. So anyway, there was like so much to learn. There was so much to learn, and so much that I was learning during this situation, and so much loss at the same time. But what happened after was trying to go back to normal life was really confusing. And it was almost like we could really handle the really intense situation in the hospital, because we were all very alive and we were very in it, and there was so much pain and so much confusion and so much being so unsure of what was going to happen in the future. After that, coming back to, my family's in Northern California. I was already living in Los Angeles. So immediately when it happened, I moved into the hospital. I never came back to my apartment. My friends had to pack up my apartment, and someone towed my car up there. And so at some point, about 8 months later, he was coming back to the family house in Santa Cruz. And that's when things started to really get difficult. And I started to be able to make trips back down to LA, which I did eventually move down here not long after the transition home started to happen. But that's when it became really confusing for me, because I could come back to Los Angeles and everything was the same. For anyone that lives in Los Angeles, it just is that way. You can leave LA for 5 years, probably longer, and come back, and everything's the same. And so I could go to get, my coffee, ice blended drinks that I was drinking all the time, and just walk through the same neighborhood, and I would just cry. I'd have these periods of time where I just felt like very clear and had all these, understood my purpose and the meaning of life. All of this got really activated for me when I was in the hospital. But when I was trying to do like normal things, I would just get it was kind of like confusion is all I can say. And I would cry. I'm not somebody who cries either. That's not really how I process at all, actually. And so then my nervous system would just be overwhelmed, and then I would cry. I felt a very huge sense of loss of personal identity. It was one that I wanted to give up entirely also, because there's a way that some of us will choose to honor someone or something, and the way that we do that is we sacrifice all these aspects of ourself, whether it's like self-care, usually that, the things that we want for ourselves, like personal dreams, desires, aspirations, all of that seems like it's really selfish and really petty, and what's important is to be with this person. And so there's all this self-judgment that's going on. So there was like abandoning of the self. And in a lot of ways, there was like a death of that self, because I did awaken to the beginning of this person that I grew into, the person that I am today. But at the time, I was 22. I think I turned 23 in the hospital with my brother while he was healing in there. And there was a lot of anger coming up for me. But because he broke his neck surfing, it was something that he was doing what he loved to do, and that was kind of part of the story even for him. And it was just like, at least he wasn't working on a construction site, which is where he was supposed to be that day. At least he wasn't hit by a drunk driver, and there was all of this like anger and resentment and rage, like we're, directing towards someone else. So it kind of allowed that part to be a little bit easier. But in some ways, I didn't really have a place to send my anger or process my anger. So I became really frustrated with life, and I did become angry. I was just like very angry, very edgy, and and anybody who kind of messed with me in any way, they were definitely getting it. It was just whether it was, you know, yeah. So, you know, there was so much that I learned. There was so much light that came out of that, but there was, I had to go into a really dark place for that to happen. And so for me, it was really processing a lot of anger more than sadness, a lot of anger at the world, at life, at the hospital, at the care situation in the hospital, and how that was severely lacking, and how they almost killed him a number of times, and the doctors and the way that it was really an intention of theirs to remove hope from the patients and from the family, and really saying all kinds of things that never needed to be said in the way that they said them. And so I guess that's where, you know, like anger was directed. So there was a lot of anger, and eventually that in itself broke me, because my nervous system was so exhausted, and I was so worn out, and just within all of my family, it's just like, we just cry about anything. And mostly it was just, you know, that we loved each other and that we could be together. But eventually all of that energy just kind of broke me, and I got to the point where it wasn't a surrender because of choice. It was just almost like an energetic surrender because I had no other choice. I had no energy. I love to wear a lot of black. I was wearing a lot of black at the time, and I actually at some point had to stop doing that because I would see I wouldn't wear any makeup any longer, like mascara or eyeliner or something. I wouldn't wear it anymore because just all over my face all the time because I was crying. And so just in this place of just kind of being weak and having just no energy to fight any longer. And that was ultimately really beautiful, and how I ended up being able to heal, and how I ended up making space for others, because I didn't have any more energy to be making everybody else wrong all the time. So that experience in itself, and that was the first time I ever really went through anything like that. And because that was so intense and it was so extreme and I grew so much, anytime something extreme would happen like that again, I had something to reference. I had something to remember, and I can remember the work that I did and how there was somewhere in the journey I had reflected on some other, a little bit more external family members that had some really intense things happen in their life, some really dark things happen in their life, and saw the way that they didn't face it, and the way that they didn't process and just kind of tried to stuff it or push it away. And I saw how that didn't serve them. And this was just so huge for me, and it was so in the center of my life, and it's so many years later now. I think we're like at 20 years later, but it's still real.
Yes.
You know, it's just, but we've all healed together, and we've gone through all of this together, and my brother has survived, like, this amazing
that part. I was like, I hope your brother is still with us.
He is, and he's amazing. And so where I became super spiritual from the experience, like, he did not. We're opposite. Like, I'm Scorpio, he's Taurus. He's really chill. He's really just super grateful to be here and with his family and with his friends. He still has like a friend unit around there, and he gets to live by the ocean, and it's like when you witness someone that, as hard as it was for me, I was always like, but I'm not even him. I don't even have to face what it is that he has to face and deal with. Talk about frustration and anger and any of that. He just, all of the time, of course there's been a few bumps in the road here and there, but he's like pretty even keel. He just breathes through it. He doesn't freak out. He's not angry at everyone. He's not like victim-y. He's just like, you see him and how much he just appreciates life and how cool and chill he is, and you're just, Like, okay, I can handle anything happening in my life. I can handle it. Like, I can walk on my own and walk, period, and feed myself and be able to just be out in life and visit with my friends. And I have the freedom to kind of go through life the way that I want to. And all of that gets re-inspired for me every time I'm around him.
And what condition is he in now? Like, what quality of life does he?
Well, he's quadriplegic, so he is neck down, paralyzed, and he can do some shoulder shrugging. My parents are his main caretakers. They do have, there are other caretakers that are involved, but it's pretty serious caretaking. So my parents are, involved in it a lot. But his quality of life, as far as that goes, because he has parents that love him, and my mom spends so much time with him, my dad as well, they kind of, they take, different responsibilities and times that they share with him. And even before he got in his accident, he was just always kind of like homebody, liked to be at home, liked to be near the family. So that is where he feels safe. And there have been studies, on people who experience those types of injuries and life changes. And I believe that the studies say that those who have experienced the highest quality of life are kind of say that are ones that are quadriplegic. I think it's because you lose everything.
Yeah. Wow. I'd never heard that before, but it does make sense that just to have your life and your breath and the opportunity to still be here, a lot of gratitude and awareness.
Yeah, and sometimes in those studies, people who are quadriplegic, who are paraplegic and have maybe a bit more use, have reported it being a little bit more frustrating for them, because it's there's things that they can do, and so they want to be able to do more, as opposed to someone that just had to completely surrender. It's hard to understand. It's really hard to understand, and I think that's the thing that we all experience when we come across somebody like this, is we're immediately I don't know how I would deal with that situation, or how would I. And I do that. I'm like, God, I just don't. I might be able to be peaceful in my own life but I'm in control.
Right.
And when you're in a situation like that, you're not. And you are at the mercy of who's taking care of you and who's willing to take care of you. And so what kind of decisions are they going to make for you? And sometimes there isn't an option for people, and there isn't somebody to take care of them, and they do have to go in a home, or they're being taken care of by somebody that they don't have a good relationship with, and so many variables, and we just don't ever have to think about that. Most of us don't ever really have to think about that unless something like that.
Yeah. I can't imagine. And when you were saying that, that thought did come through my mind. I am such an active person, a little bit ADHD, and love my independence. And just with a neck injury from high school, the little bit that limits my life with pain and the things that I can't physically do anymore, it can be frustrating. And so I can kind of understand more where you were saying the paraplegics would have a little bit more angst or frustration in their condition versus your brother. And I can understand that, because I can see my friends that are able to go surfing or, do these daring, amazing sport type activities. And maybe I could, but there's such a fear that it's almost paralyzing to even think about doing some of those things, for the fear of injuring myself even more. So I can't imagine not having my independence and freedom, and just what that must be like on a daily, moment by moment basis. And just how amazing that your brother has this amazing opportunity to go through this experience, as well as having you and your parents that are so supportive and understanding and loving, and have his back. What a blessing and a gift, even in the midst of the trials and challenges that he's facing every day.
yeah, we all feel really to have each other through this experience. That's one of the things you learn too. It's like we don't have a choice, maybe before we get here, like we don't have a choice once we're here about like who our family is, and so that's different, for everyone. But definitely I've learned that it's really important to communicate, to have good communication, to say the things that need to be said before things like this happen. And then also, before people die, because that can happen anytime, any second. And we just take that was, one of the original shocks for me. It was like, I had an idea of what my life was going to be like, what my family's life was going to be like, how my parents were going to be in my life. And so it wasn't just my brother that was like all of his entire personal situation was changing. It affected everything, like all the aspects of all of life and how we all, affect each other as family. I don't get to have my parents around. I call them and I go and see all of them, and I love them, and I am so grateful that they're my parents, and so grateful that they take care of my brother, and it has allowed me the ability to live my life in the way that I have lived my life, because there's so much guilt and so much responsibility. You really figure out what you feel like your responsibility is for your family and the situation, and that's going to be totally different for everyone. But regardless of what anyone else thinks or how any of it can be explained, it's within you, like and so there's responsibility for the self and our own life, and I feel a very strong sense of responsibility to my purpose and the things that I am supposed to do in this life, and that does include my family. So I did get to a point where my self-sacrificing thinking wasn't going to work. Like, my guidance was like, that is not the way. That's not the way that this is going to work, and that's not what it is that is your role, not now, anyway. And so it's been a very powerful learning experience, and just, really lifelong, because it happened. He was almost 20 and I was just in my early 20s, and so it's been about 21 years already. And so, this is a huge part of our story.
It's literally painted a lens over your life that will never change from that moment forward. It's a new reality, a new dynamic. And I love hearing how you're so conscious and aware of the choice points that you could have made in all of those circumstances, and your beautiful journey of seeing that and seeing your potential and seeing your purpose, and the discovery and the work that you must have had to go through in order to have the clarity of, yes, this is unexpected, this is unfortunate, this is not in my plan of what I thought I was going to deal with as an adult, and how can I take this and make lemonade out of the experience, and allow this to be a part of your story to impact people, to see what's possible when you do the work and you realize that everything that's happening in your life is for you, and it's how it creates who we are and our uniqueness and how it shapes our purpose. It's just amazing to see how you've progressed through this and have come to who you are today, and how you're sharing your gifts and talents and your love and your music and your gifts. Yeah. I mean, you could be still in the victim story of, this is unfair, why did this happen to my family, and in the trauma of it, instead of transforming that into what you have and being the amazing, beautiful, magical human that I'm seeing you and discovering that you are.
Thank you. It did teach me that everything is a choice.
100%.
We don't necessarily have a choice in the things that are going to happen to us. And so there can be argument around, are things meant to happen? Is everything happening for you? But looking at things as though they are happening for you gives you the opportunity to kind of choose your behavior around it. But whether you believe that or not, you still have the choice in how you're going to process it. How are you going to take responsibility for you in this situation? So how does it affect you? How do you respond? How do you respond now? What are ways that you can work on this? Trauma happens, and it's not something that we choose. I also believe that we very well might have chosen that before we got here, and that's the work that we're doing in this life. But I talk a lot about sacred purpose, and everybody wants to know what their purpose is. And so sometimes that creates confusion for people, because they're like, but what is my purpose? And you are your purpose. We are our purpose. It's the things that you love doing. It's the way that you love people. It's how you are inspired to show up, or what is it that you really want to teach people. It's how you love your family. And some people have more external things. Some people are going to be teachers and lead people in experiences, or write books, or, perform in ways that affect people. None of that is more important or less important. It's all part of it. And how are you living your purpose? But I believe that the trauma that we experience, as we heal and do the work to heal for that, it becomes wisdom, and it becomes something that we have to share with someone else. And so maybe you're not writing a book about your experience, but maybe you just have it to share with this one person over there, and it changes their life. I met a woman this past year in Joshua Tree. So I was going out there a bunch. If you're just listening, I'm in Los Angeles, and so Joshua Tree is just really not that far. It's just a couple hours away. And so I was really feeling called to the land out there. So I was going out there and spending some time. So I was staying on this woman's property that I had maybe stayed on. Maybe this was my third time. And she has horses. And so she was just, taking care of the horses. And we were just chit-chatting outside. And she was telling me that she used to live in LA. And when she had moved out there, so she had a younger brother who broke his neck and became quadriplegic. And he moved out there and bought a house. And so she moved out there and bought a house and started a business so that she can be near to him. And so here I am, this is a huge part of my life. As a waitress, I used to tell everybody about, my circumstance. It just would come out of me because it was just such a huge part of everything I was processing all the time. But so here I am 20 years later. I have definitely done so much work, so much processing. It doesn't come up in every conversation that I have anymore, but at least by this time it's okay, I have had all the experiences around all of this, and sharing and using the story to inspire other people, using the story to motivate me, to keep me active on my purpose, because look at what had to happen in my life for me to wake up. Look at what had to happen for me to become activated, for me to know what my purpose is, and for me to be inspired to do so. I mean, freedom is a huge thing for me. And one of the reasons that is because, one, my brother doesn't have physical freedom. He's stuck in a chair, stuck in a room. And then my parents, who take care of him, are also stuck to that situation. And so I'm very aware that I have freedom. And it makes me not, it's not in my interest to create family. I don't need to, have a partner to get married and have children with, and I don't need that. It's more important for me to have my freedom and focus on how do I think I'm supposed to be serving. So all of that being said, I couldn't believe the way, just the reaction that my whole body felt when this woman was sharing her story with me. I've never had somebody to say those things to me. I have a younger sister, so we're sisters in this situation, and she is the only person in this world that I share all of this with. Because even though I'm in the family with my mom, dad, and my brother, they're not a sister in their family. They're not a daughter in the family. And so the things that her and I experience, are very similar. And so it was just like, I was like speechless. Then of course I shared with her, but it was so powerful. And that's how it is. I mean, it wasn't a situation where really she was sharing wisdom with me and how I was going to get through it, but just connecting. Just, no, here's another woman who, like, this is her brother, and this happened, maybe for them it was like an extra 20 years, and she had moved to be near him, and it was just so powerful. And it's that way for all of us. Like, we all have a purpose, and we all have a different story, and we all have a story for someone that just sharing our story is helpful for them. And so this just going back to the conversation of, like, it's in your trauma, it's in the experiences that you've been through, the wisdom that you're looking for to identify with, that, like, this is who I am, and this is what I have to teach, and this is what my purpose is. It's all everything. And all of that is always changing based on the things that you're going through. But there will be a through line. There will be a thing that these are the things that are important to me about life, even before my trauma happened to me, and I can look back at what was important to me about life. What did I care about? What is it that I'm always trying to, like, share with people? Or is sharing, like, in that way not a way? Do I write? Am I because I'm a speaker, and it wants to come through me. And so the things that I am drawn to in life, even for, like, work, like I said, I was a waitress. Life has pulled me into situations where I am around people where I'm, like, using that skill, where I'm speaking and I'm communicating. But someone else who might be, like, really introverted is not going to have that experience, but they might be a writer, and they might write fiction. I have a friend. I have a friend that I've known for a really long time. I actually met her, me being a waitress. Most of the people that I know in my life have come from that. And anyway, after knowing her for like 20 years, she's reading me this book that she wrote. And it's a true story, and it's a personal story, but it's about emotion, and it is about trauma, and it's the way that she writes. It is a story, and you are so connected with this person's experience that I'm like, it's amazing the experience that I have when she's reading to me what she's written, because I learn so much about human experience, because I feel so much of her when she's writing this. And so I just go to say that because it's like, it doesn't have to be this clear, like, this is how I am here to teach you, or what it is that I'm teaching, but it's in our expression, and it's in us being free and fully expressed. Like, that's the goal, right? Nobody's fully expressed. I mean, there's a couple, but usually it's part of our life work to get out of our own way, so that we can then be free to express that is coming through us, or that we're here to express.
So true. And when you were sharing, I got really emotional. The piece about, we're not alone in any of our drama stories. Like, there is someone else on this planet of 7 billion people, at least one, that can relate, because they've gone through something so similar. And this podcast has been so therapeutic for me. And today's I love the kitty. It knew that we need a little kitty energy, healing energy. And just the power of the story, the power of not feeling alone, the power of having someone else say, I got you, I understand what you're going through, how that must feel, because I've also felt the same thing, or I've gone through the same thing. And I'm realizing by showing up and finally doing this podcast, what's available. The truth is here, and it doesn't impact anyone else. What it has touched my heart is just so profound that It really is a choice. And what we do with these opportunities, how we show up, how we share, and just how much of an honor that is to have these experiences for whatever reason, and then to turn that story from the drama, the victim, into our gold. And like you said, we don't necessarily need to know our purpose and have this grand plan. It's just processing, being present to what we're going through. What cards have we been dealt? And instead of running and hiding from that, but standing in the moment of that experience and fully embracing that and being present for all of the opportunities and lessons that that brings to us. And then just by sharing it, like sharing in a podcast, sharing in a book, sharing to a friend that you meet at work or in these different circumstances, like those connection points. And if it doesn't serve or feed anyone else but just that one person, then that life experience was so worth going through and healing from, to be that opportunity to be a vessel of a message, a channeler, a messenger, to let somebody know you're not alone. I got you. I understand your pain. I'm so appreciative of how vulnerable and authentic and transparent you have been in sharing this beautiful story and how this is going to impact the listeners. So thank you for everything that you went through to be the person that you are right now, right here in front of us, to share such powerful wisdom and opportunities of how to face the adversities and be on the other side of it. Very empowered, goddess.
Thank you for asking.
Oh, wow. I love this work. I love it. It never ceases to amaze me what's possible. Human connection is so powerful and so liberating and expansive. I'm just in awe, so much awe and honor to the universe, and for this opportunity today. It's just like, this is, I think, number 7, and I've resisted this so long that it's just like, wow, this is why this is so important. Why this is such powerful story medicine. I was curious too, when you were sharing the anger piece that you navigated in this experience, when you're in the place of realizing that the anger is not going to serve you, what are some of your tools and resources that you use to channel that or transmute it out of your system? Because hopefully we all know that trapped emotions, anger, rage, sorrow, guilt, shame, can cause disease and discomfort in our bodies. So I'm wondering, how did you navigate that?
It's actually really interesting for you to ask that question, because what I didn't realize at the time, and what I didn't realize until years later, was because of that experience, and I'll explain why after I say this, I put my anger in shadow. So I am a martial artist. I got my black belt in Taekwondo when I was in 7th grade, I think. I was about 12. Then my family opened a studio. I was teaching classes, and it was just, by the time I was 15, it was just a huge part of my life. And it's part of my life again now. And it's called martial arts. So martial, from Mars, the planet Mars rules aggression. It rules your fighting energy. Mars is the god of war. So, when I was younger, I was like 8. I was in 2nd grade or something like that when I started. So this was a practice. And so I had practice moving this energy. It also helped me really identify this energy and become really strong, and at some point, right, in like my late teens, early 20s, as we all are anyway, just the ego kind of gets out of control. It's just fueled, with all of this energy. And when my brother broke his neck, I stopped. I stopped. I stopped eating. I was only drinking those coffee ice blended drinks I was talking about. Initially, you know, is in honor of him. Like, I refused to drink, and that was the only thing I did at the time. Would like drink some alcohol. I wouldn't drink any alcohol. I refused to have any kind of indulgent type of experience, like, while he was suffering. Eventually, he got out of the hospital. I started visiting friends in LA. I started drinking a little bit again. But why to say this was like, as his body changed and he started losing all of the muscle on his body because he couldn't move it or use it anymore, and he became really, really skinny, I did the same thing. It was also a way of controlling my emotions and not crying. I would stop, I wouldn't breathe. I stopped breathing. Like, I would just kind of control, like, my breath. So it was like hardly breathing. I became really skinny. It was something that I could control, so I could kind of control my emotions. Anybody who knows, like, you don't eat, especially in the morning, you don't eat for long periods of time and just drink coffee, you can actually get high off of that, but then you just get very floaty. You're not in your body. So then, you know, I became vegan. There was lots of ways that I would, you know, I would drink alcohol, I'd smoke weed, not eat, drink lots and lots of coffee, and there were eventually some other things that I used more like therapeutically, but that surrender that I was talking about, like, I lost my life force energy. I got really weak, and I wasn't practicing the martial arts anymore. Basically, for like a long period of time, it just got more and more. And I eventually got into yoga, but even like before all of that, it's kind of, I lost my fire. But during that period of surrender, I also started to learn about my behavior. I was living in a house of 8 people, and there was 8 of us living in a 3-bedroom house, and then tons of other people that were around all the time. So initially, when I was just like on fire about everything, I eventually embarrassed myself to myself, because I would be mean and horrible to someone for whatever the reason was, however I felt justified. And then later on some day, maybe later that same day, when I would be crying and not able to just function because I was this confused mess of a person, it would be them. This very specifically happened one day. It was this girl who I'd been just such an asshole to. She was the only one that was in the house. She didn't even live in the house. And she like came and sat next to me and put her arm around me. And I barked at her for making some compliments about, you know, what I looked like or something before in that day. And she was the only person that was there for me. And it was just like she was the only person in the world that was there for me. And I felt like I didn't have anyone that was there for me because of what was going on with my family. And I was angry that nobody could understand what I was going through, because how could they? And then here's this person who was there for me. So I don't know if that makes sense to anybody who's listening, but there's a bunch of stories that go into this. And it's like, I started realizing how like out of line my behavior was, and how I was just reacting. I was reacting to my personal experience with all of my tools that I had to fight. But I was fighting people who it had nothing to do with them. And so it was this period of me being someone who was crying all the time, being someone who was emotional wreck, who is someone who I would have had so much judgment about beforehand. And then here's this person who's holding space for me, that the person that I was would still want to judge her for holding space for someone that treated her so shitty earlier in that day. And so it was like all of my stuff was just like fighting. And I just, at some point, like I said, I just had to just surrender, because I'd just been like fighting so much. And it was inside of there that I became really embarrassed about my behavior, and I became really embarrassed about my fire and my willpower and my strength. I was just like, you're an asshole. And I put all of that stuff in shadow, and I decided to change my behavior towards people. So it was beautiful, one part of what I was doing, but I didn't understand about shadow, and I didn't understand about any of that. So I started just being different to people, and it changed my life, and it changed me. Because I hadn't been someone before that had been compassionate. And the truth is, it's because I hadn't had any experience. Like, I didn't have trauma growing up, and I didn't have horrible things happening to me growing up, so I didn't understand pain or depression, or, you know, I was a fighter. I had this martial arts that gave me this energy to fight, and that in itself was just, you know, it was a gift, and it was a privilege that I got from the experience that I had in life. And so this, when you have anger in shadow, what happens is you become this kind of submissive energy. You don't hold boundaries. You don't speak your truth any longer, or, you know, ever. In some extreme cases, you can become a total doormat. And for me, I just was like, it was almost like I just let my opinions go. I just, just wanted to love people. So like I was saying, it was really healthy for me for a certain period of time. And then what would happen is that I'm a Scorpio. I am a Scorpio fire dragon. For anyone who knows astrology, my sun is conjunct Mars. I got a lot of fire. And so what would happen is like I would stuff it, right? And so then I would just be so loving and so nice and whatever. But eventually, if you fucked with me at the wrong time, the dragon would definitely come out. And you know, people, I would just like make a mess of things. And so then anyway, a few years ago, I was doing, you know, in all of my like deep life coaching training and work, we were doing a lot of work on shadow. And I realized through these experiences that I had actually put anger in shadow. So it's like anytime the anger would come out, it would do its job. So Mars is a positive moving force. It's not negative because it's fire and because it's explosive. A lot of times it's what gets the truth out. But there's a way in which to manage this energy. And so if you stick this fire in shadow, then what happens is eventually it's like a pot that's boiling with water, right? Eventually it just explodes and it still spills all over your life, and then you kind of clean it up and put it back in shadow, but you don't learn how to integrate it. So I've also found out that I have my Mars is in Chiron is in Aries, and so Chiron is your wounded healer. And so I actually have a lot to teach around anger. So what is healthy anger? Healthy anger is speaking your truth, setting boundaries, holding boundaries, healthy no. And the martial arts is absolutely part of how I process and experience healthy anger, because I think you were talking about ways that we store energy in the body and then it can make us sick. Because I have so much fire, this allows me to move the fire. And it's not like I'm punching a bag and I'm focusing all this anger and energy into this bag and I'm punching someone. Not at all. But it's the energy that I can like move my body with. It's fire that, you know, the way that we like express, the way that we kiop in karate, and we're saying like haya, like, but people know that as you expel that energy, you know, out of your solar plexus. That's a fire center, and you expel that energy, and it can be forceful, and you just, it doesn't have to be negative. It's very positive. It's very positive for me. It creates a lot of positive energy. It's really great for those of us who are entrepreneurs and are like exposing ourselves online, being really vulnerable. You know, sometimes there's a reaction afterwards of just like, you know, I feel too exposed. I feel too seen by everyone. What did I just share? And, or, you know, or self-doubt, or feeling stuck, or feeling like writer's block, or your fire's out. Because people will say that, right? When they're like not inspired, or if their heart's broken. Going into this type of practice is really helpful for that. And so some people, it might be running, and some people might go to the gym, and there's different ways to like, maybe it's just breathing, like breath of fire, some yoga, right? So different people, you do different things to like activate this. So if you have a lot of we all need to work on our anger, because it's not taught in our society. So I can't hear you.
Oh, I was just agreeing with you.
I just want to make sure your sound didn't shut off. Mine did the other day.
Oh, wow.
So, you know, moving this energy around our body, that's the biggest thing for me, is doing my work. Shadow work doesn't ever stop. Personal growth work and like the self-examination, it doesn't ever stop because we're constantly growing. And the maybe shadow aspects that we come here with, or that we are created by the way that our energy is in this lifetime and our experiences, it's there as a teacher. It's a major teacher. It can be part of our message that we're teaching to others, but it's a teacher for us to do the work. So I have to do my work around all of that. Some women especially need to do work around like speaking their voice and getting out there. And I have that. I have that, and I need to do work around allowing space for it. And then also allowing it to be, though, not shaming myself, you know, for that energy. Because, you know, that's a whole other story. But it's like women have been persecuted for all the reasons, right? But it's coming from women being powerful and having powerful energy and things to say. And women are a force. And all of that with religion and culture and all of this, you know, over time, you know, women are coming back out of it. But it was like all of that was put down, shut down. Women were killed for all of that. People have memories of having their tongues cut out and being hung and burned and all of that for being powerful and strong. So there is shame around it. And so that can be in the shadow also for us collectively.
Yes. So if you could share with our guests one maybe simple tool that they could incorporate into their day or life that would help them transmute this anger from being stagnant energy in the body to expressing and moving it out. Do you have a biohack for us on that?
It would be a combination of different things, but it's going to be self-examination, right? So you might have to close your eyes and be quiet and breathe and get clear on what it is what that anger is. 'Cause a lot of people are in real denial about it. So getting clear on it. Moving. I'd say you gotta move. And so you gotta at least walk. You gotta walk. You gotta move it, like the breath. Get walking, you know, faster than sitting, right? It's going to increase your heart rate. So it's being interactive with it. That in itself is huge. I'd say that. But acknowledgement needs to happen first.
Exactly.
And some people like to use their meditation to ask their guides for that information. Or maybe you're pulling cards like from some kind of oracle deck. Or maybe you're just like, okay, this is a powerful thing too. People will not completely identify with their anger and say, I am angry, but they'll say anger is moving through me right now. So you can say, well, what does it want to teach me? Where am I not speaking my truth? Because that's what's happening is, right? It's like it's inside of some container and then it wants to come out. So, you know, maybe it's like getting some personal clarity with your own self. Like we can learn from everything. So what is this here to teach me? If it was given to me, if it's a gift, then what is it here to teach me? What can I learn from this? Is there some way where I'm not speaking my truth or where I'm not drawing a boundary, or I have expectations? I'm having expectations of someone else. That is a boundary thing too, because you're not being clear with your own self on where you end and where the other person begins. And if we're in a relationship that there are going to be types of expectations, maybe like a romantic one, but even friends, you need to be clear about what your expectations are, and then you need to interact with that person to see is that actually going to work. So it's a lot of taking personal responsibility. Does that answer your question? Do you feel like
Yeah. I love just the clarity that you gave on those simple little steps. So someone that is going through their anger and rage, they could just be able to take that and run with it. That's beautiful. And a lot of the practices that I've done as well. And the movement piece has literally been a lifesaver in transmuting all of the abuse and life experiences that I had that were less than fortunate. Without ecstatic dance, I don't know that I would be as healthy and grounded and available to be of service. And a solid almost 10 years of a really beautiful practice. So I'm grateful for that and the medicine that it's created. I wonder, with your martial arts practice, how does that also support you transmuting and moving energy just in your daily life, not even just like past experiences, but how do you use that as a tool every day or however your practice is?
it helps me get into my body. And this kind of thing, you know, people who do spiritual work, you know, really sensitive people can maybe like identify with that. It's easy to get, for me, I get up here. It's all, you know, I'm very mental and I like to talk. And so it pulls, you know, everything here. And so when I go to the practice, and I do yoga also, but this one is more aggressive. And so it's like, I can't think about anything else. Like when your mind is going crazy, I mean, we start the class like jump roping for like 2 or 3 minutes. I mean, just right away, because you're dealing with what's going on with your body. You're dealing with your breath. You're trying to make sure that you're getting enough breath. You're trying to make sure that you can do what it is that you're asking it to do. So, you know, it helps me get in my body and it helps me focus. And really, it's the breath. Like the breath is something, it is such a huge part of our life, and we don't have to think about it, because even though we can control our breath, we will breathe even if we don't think about it. But the breath is our prana. It's our life, it's life force energy. I had somebody that I was having a conversation with the other day, and she said, when you breathe through your nose during the time that you're inhaling, your body does a scan of itself when you are breathing. That immediately made me breathe when she was talking about it. And so I think that's what's happening. It's like you have to breathe so much without even thinking about it, because of what you're doing in martial arts, because you're punching and you're kicking, that so much breath is coming in that it resets my whole system. So I like to do it. I don't like to do it in the mornings. It's not my way. Because I expend so much energy. For me, I kind of blow out my energy a little bit too much. So it's better for me to construct my day around doing martial arts in the evening, late afternoon. And what that does for me is it like resets, gives me all of this breath, fuels me with all this positive energy, and then I can finish the rest of my day with that energy. So it's just, it's really like an infusion of positive. It's positive because you're kicking things as hard as you can kick them, and there's no limit to that. And so it's a personal challenge that if you're up for the challenge and you're like, I can do this, I can do this. And then if you're at a different day where you're so tired and you're like, I'm just going to at least show up and do the movements, there's also something in that. It's like you're showing up for yourself.
The discipline.
Yeah. It's hard. I don't want to go half the time, and I love it. It's my favorite thing, and I don't want to go, but I'm fully aware of what happens now. So I'm just, my alarms go off. I get in the car. I drive there. First 2 minutes, like I said, into the jump rope. Like I'm over whatever resistance that I was having because I'm at least in the class. So, you know, it helps you fight through resistance. Yoga, because that's something I do a lot as well. Yoga, I need both of these. Yoga is about a surrender for me. Even if I'm doing a pose that's really hard and I'm activating all these muscles and I might not want to on that day, I have to surrender into it. But the thing with the martial arts is that it's an activation. I have to choose. It's not surrendering. It's like I have to choose and will myself to do it anyway. And it's that experience. It shows us that we can do that with anything.
Great examples for everyday life. Like all of those hard moments when you're faced with a challenge, you can either surrender if that's the appropriate energy, or you can use the breath and push through it and allow that activation to actually see you through whatever that contrast is that you're dealing with. So I love that. Like that's amazing gift and tool to take away from today's call. Like, wow. And I love the concept of surrendering and what that allows and how that opens up our bodies to even more possibility of expansion. And when we're in that surrendering space, there's no more struggle. There just is. Drop into what is real in this moment. What is truth in this very moment? Almost like when you're in that class, that first 2 minutes of the jump roping, your brain can't be focused on all the bullshit that's been going on in the day. It's like, oh, I have to be right here, right now, in order to be able to do this.
Yeah.
Love it. Love it. I think we're getting a little close to being at our hour mark. So I have, let's see, any other questions I have? I have one question that I ask everybody at the end. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with us?
I feel like I've shared so much. One of the reasons why I share is because it's therapeutic for our own selves to share, because we hear things as we're sharing them with someone else that we wouldn't hear it otherwise. And it's my gift. It really is my gift. When I was more in some of my more angry or judgmental days, I held on to my information and I was like, oh, well, this isn't for you, so I'm not, sharing it. And as we share, we also let go of the things that we're holding on to. And sometimes it actually allows our story to change, because like we have shared what it is that maybe we're holding on to, or that we're afraid of, or we're embarrassed of, or that someone else needs to hear. And then now we're free from that, and then like more can move through. That's the thing I love about the human experience, is like the more that you do, the more there is for you, the more that you can grow. It doesn't ever stop. The connecting with people doesn't ever stop. The personal growth doesn't ever stop. And the amount of wisdom that there is to experience, because we don't attain it, right? Like we experience it. It's endless.
So true. And just all the opportunities within these tools and these resources that we've shared today, that at times before I started speaking my truth and allowing my throat chakra to be activated, I was somewhat like you. I'm like, people already know this. Why do I need to share this? This isn't like, is this really for you? And does it really matter that it's coming from me? And what's the significance of this information coming from me through my story lens versus coming through someone else's lens? And it's not about that. Like, I think that's been one of my biggest lessons, is me being present to my purpose and being fully activated and living it has nothing to do with the expectation or outcome in the world. That's a byproduct. That's just the icing on the cake. But like you said, this is our medicine. This is for us, first and foremost.
And we have to allow ourselves the experience. And so, yes. Thank you so much for having me here and asking me these questions and letting me share. It's such a gift to give to someone else, to allow them to share. And we can all do that with people in our life. And the experience itself causes you to have more acceptance of yourself. Like I could go and listen to this later and be like, oh God, like I should have said this or I shouldn't have said that. But like, I want to be free of all of that. And I want to grow as I'm going. And so, just let it out.
Yeah, me too. I love it. And by practicing this and by modeling it and sharing this, we are living examples for people to witness.
Yeah.
Realize that, I mean, I don't know how many podcasts I've listened to over the years, and I've been wanting to start my own podcast since 2015.
Hmm.
And that fear literally has paralyzed me.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, what am I so fucking afraid of?
Yeah.
Nobody's going to kill me. I'm not going to be burned at the stake. I'm not saying anything that's super radical yet.
Yeah.
I'm working up to it. And, you know, one of the biggest gifts when I entered my 40s was this new belief system of, I don't give a fuck what anybody says. I'm my own person. I don't care. More than likely, I'm judging myself harder through you as a projection than you're even thinking about me. So like that gift of finally realizing that we all have a story, we're all here for a reason, and there's nothing really that different between you, me, and the next person other than the uniqueness of our story and maybe the physical dynamics of who we are, because we're all souls. And last I checked, there's not like a race or a demographic on souls. Like it's universal. We're all the same in that essence. And so the more I drop into that and realize that I'm not my body, this energy that I'm holding and carrying is a gift, and it's for me. And then as I'm emoting that and transmuting that, then it gets to be the gift that anyone else that resonates with it can share it with themselves and others.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Totally in alignment with all of that belief system.
Oh, thank you, sister. I'm going to ask you my favorite last question. And then I'm curious, I saw your drum when we were starting the video. I'm wondering if you'd like to play something for us?
Maybe I'll sing a little piece for you.
Perfect. So let's my last favorite question is, if you could ask source, creator, universe, God, goddess, anything, what would you ask them?
Well, okay, so I don't believe in deity. I don't believe that there is something that has the answer for me. I think that what is God to me, and I don't use that term, but for what that is to me is the energy that is inside of each of us. That is what feels like us to us. It's all of that together. All of it. And so I feel like it's all of us together. So as we ask the question, we are also the answer. And so my question always is, what is my purpose? What is it that how can it be a service? How am I supposed to be showing up for the whole? What is my purpose? What am I doing here, and how can I do it? So I don't have questions otherwise in regards to that. So, I read tarot, and I'll oftentimes tell people, if you have a question, ask, because the Spirit's going to tell you what it wants to tell you anyway. So definitely if you have a question. But I'm somebody who, I don't have a question. I have a lot of desire, and I have a lot of fire, and I have a lot of purpose type of energy that I'm feeling all the time. And so I feel like that's just so much part of who I am, and how I do what it is that I do is because I don't see God and source and all of that as outside. Yes. I see it as inside. Mm-hmm. That I am the answer. I think that you are the answer. I think that you are the answer to your question, because you are that, and I'm totally getting chills. You are that portion of God. So the question and the answer are together in the same, and you're living it. So the more that you be, and the more that you are, and the more that you can do all this work on your human self to get out of the way, and the more that you are, then that question is evolving. And so for anyone that's listening, and if you know what your question is, like, what would you ask? Then my suggestion to you is to find how you are the answer to that question.
Oh, wow.
So that's my response to that one.
I love it. I am loving this question and all of the amazing responses that are coming through. And everyone has been in their own beautiful, dynamic exploration of themselves. Like just how they're sharing is just like so beautiful, how everybody's coming up with what this question means to them. And
I'll be excited to hear everybody's answer. Yeah.
I think I'm going to do a little podcast where I just edit all of these questions and put that together as a compilation.
That's great.
Fascinating. And I love how you're sharing the concept of we are the question and the answer. And how that lands for me is there's nothing more to wonder or be worried about. Like I am connected to spirit. I am the energy of which that answer is going to come through if I sit still and listen. If I'm open, if I'm ready.
Especially when you're in integrity. So there are those people that are going to be like, I don't resonate with that at all. I don't have the answer. But if you look at maybe how you've separated yourself out in life and how you're hiding here and not honest over here and doubting yourself over here, it's kind of, these are the things that we do, you know, to ourself that kind of like pull that energy apart. So maybe there's a little bit of work that needs to be done. And that's work for everyone. It's work for everyone. And we all have more work in different areas than someone else, you know. And so that's also part of this, right? So we share where we're at and like what it is that we're working on. And so like as we do that work, like we don't become like perfect or somebody who doesn't make mistakes or any of that stuff. We just come into alignment with ourself. We come into like integrity with our own self and our own beliefs. And maybe we believe what we believe because of like how we're so in alignment with ourself. And then that's the answer.
Mm-hmm. It's also very similar to like your practice with your martial arts. You set the alarm, you get in the car, the mind might be going crazy, but your muscle memory of your body is like, nope, we're doing this thing. This is just muscle memory, autopilot. And then until you get there, and then it's like, oh yeah, I'm okay. Yes, I'm here. I want to be here. I'm doing this thing. So yeah, I really appreciate the reframe on that too, that it really comes from that individual choosing and going within, being ready. So powerful.
I would love to share how people can find me. Do you want me to play at the very end? Okay.
Yeah, let's do that. Why don't you share with our audience anything that you have going on, events or offerings, and then all of your contact information, and then we'll also add that to the show notes, and then we'll close with you playing or singing, whatever you choose to do. Awesome.
So thank you all for listening, and thank you, Azul, so much for having me here. You can find me at jaimeblack.com, and Jaime is spelled Jaime, black like the color. You can find everything about what I do from that place. So don't have anything scheduled as far as moon rituals and all of this stuff yet, just because of the current environment that we're living in. All the stuff that I really love to do is in person. But I am a musician. You can find my music from my website or going to jaimeblackmusic.com, and all of my music is there. And I have music recorded that we use, that we play live for our sound baths. So all the music that we play live, we recently have recorded last summer. I do have a collection of love songs on there. I have all of my really witchy music. It's all very ethereal, and so you get a mix of music that you can use for meditations and music that you can use for ritual or just, you know, cleaning your house. People like to, you know, drive because the music is like really calming for them. And if you do go to my website and sign up for my newsletter, you'll see a place where you can get a free song. That's what it is. It's a 7-minute song of mine that can be put on repeat and used as a meditation. I use my voice, but I don't sing any words. So it allows it to be like your soul speaking to you, source speaking to you. It's designed to activate what's in the depths. And so it can awaken you, so you can be motivated or activated or healed by it. It's a very like personal experience, and it's great for meditation. So I'll just play with my priestess drum here a little bit. My favorite thing about this drum is that I can use it to amplify my voice and sing with it. So at the beginning of my rituals and the beginning of women's circles, there is this right when I started doing women's circles, there was this piece that came through, and this is always what I sing at the beginning. It's called The Moon on my Season of the Witch album, but really what it is, it's like an activation, and it's like a welcome to the circle. So I'm going to sing that. Let me get it on my knees. And it's really nice if you close your eyes when you listen to this. Blessed be.
Thank you, Jaime. That was amazing. It's so tranquil.
Thank you
So much for being here. So appreciate you.
And I appreciate you. This is awesome work that you're doing. It's such a gift that you're giving to whoever it is that you're having the conversation with, and I honor you for that.
I honor you, and thank you so much for your vulnerable, authentic share and being so present, and the work that you're creating and the vibration that you're sending out in the world of healing and transmutation and owning our power, facing the dark night of our soul. All of it, the rage, the anger, the sorrow, the guilt, the sadness, the joy, and the bliss. I see you, priestess.
And I see you, sister.
Thank you. And thank you to all of our guests that have listened to today on the replay and being a part of this beautiful vibration. Thank you for sharing it with all that you feel like can benefit from this beautiful story.